I am very excited to be here. First of all, I feel very smart in this room full of very smart people, so happy to be here. I have been out to see some of the work that's being done by your industry, your companies in the schools. And I just wanted to start off by telling you a little bit about my background. One of the jobs I had years ago was the director of a school foundation, and I was in charge of business partnerships. So 15, 20 years ago, those partnerships typically consisted of a business donating money to a school, which we appreciated. But that was about it. Some businesses got a little more involved, and it was the exception to the rule to have a business engaged in a school more than that. And what I've seen change is that it's becoming the rule for companies and businesses to become more engaged in schools, and those partnerships, by definition, are changing so dramatically. So Sid and Dave, I've both seen some of the work in the schools that your employees do, and if we could just talk about that a little bit, as we're encouraging companies to do more and more of this. As a teacher, I want to provide them a model. So if you could model that for us and tell us what that looks like.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. And I think we bring a bunch of great ideas and programs that are happening in the state and making an impact. You know, for me, coming in industry, you know, I also obviously help run the Women Tech Council, but the Women Tech Council, for me, has always been about how do we make an impact and how do we impact the technology economy here in the state. So we think about the whole economic development pipeline all the way from K through 12 to when you're sitting at the CEO or a board member. And what we learned as we've gone through over the last kind of decade of building the organization is that industry, they want to and they need a really great workforce. And we want, as industry people, to be able to give back. We want to inspire the next generation to come into this field. And we've had experiences, whether good or bad, that have allowed us to come and create these programs. The Women Tech Council about 4 years ago had an opportunity to create a program called SheTech, which is one of our now flagship programs in that sector. And at the Women Tech Council, everything's an experiment. We actually don't think we have all the answers, but we do think we have a model that says, let's go try this. And so we actually picked up the phone and called UVU and said, hey, we have this crazy idea. How about if we start a STEM activation day and invite high school girls, 9 through 12, to just get exposure to tech? And we wanted them to not only get exposure to tech, but have opportunities to solve creative problems. For the last 3 years, last year the program had 1,200 high school girls who came through. This year we'll have 1,500. It's expanded to Weber and Dixie, and we're also going to do one in Idaho and Colorado. And what we learned from the program is that we needed, and what the unique value has become is that industry is integrated. Industry is core to what we do. I think this year we'll end up with 400 or 500 industry participants.
Wow.
They teach our workshops. The afternoon, the girls actually do this cool tech challenge. So the girls sit in teams of 9, they all get a mentor, and they have to actually solve a tech problem. So we give them a problem, we teach them how to brainstorm, how to ideate, how to validate the ideas quickly, and how to come up with a solution. They pitch it, and then teams win. So they come out of this day with learning 40 new technologies. And then this year, through some funding, we actually extended the program into internships, pathways, and scholarships. We wanted those girls not to just get activated, but to have a path to go. Because that's the greatest challenge. We create all these days, we give them moment-by-moment exposure, but what we really need is industry's help for continuation. The education system has CTE pathways, but those girls, they need industry inspiration. I did an internship when I was in high school. I was a software tester. And having that testing job when I was in high school, it guaranteed that I went into computer science. And so we need those inspiring moments. And so for us, industry offered over 300 internships to high school girls this year. If you come through SheTech, you get access to those programs. And we need more and more things like that, where industry is partnering, we're creating the workforce that we need, we're teaching skills, and we're really inspiring. Right? I'm all about showing them and demonstrating for them who they can be, what they can do, the skills they have to innovate and create, and getting them in a path where they can contribute to the economy, because we need their contributions to grow our businesses here.
You're describing what we call in education as project-based learning, hands-on experience, which evidence has proven to be more successful in teaching students those concepts if they have a real-world application. Right. So, I mean, it's a great program that you're describing. And you're talking about high school students, high school girls. I've been to visit one of your elementary school projects. Can you talk about that one, Dave, just a little bit?
So, yeah, similar problem. excuse me, similar problem we were trying to solve. You've heard this a bunch. There's not enough talent in Utah. And so we went and created a bunch of scholarships in, excuse me, in the universities. And, you know, it worked a little bit. Excuse me, guys. I've got, going here. And we couldn't get enough people. And so we had an idea. And we've got a foundation. And one thing, when I just started the company with my co-founder, a guy named Ken Krogh, we were watching a thing by Bill Gates, and Bill Gates had his one regret in life. It's kind of a big deal. Like Bill Gates is saying, "Here's my one regret," and he said he didn't help along the way. He said he made a huge amount of money, but he just didn't have enough time to do enough good. And so one of the things we did is we created a foundation in our company where we donate 1% of our revenue, 1% of our employee time, and 1% of our product to different projects that we think make sense. And so we started to think, where's the problem? And again, it's a long story, I swear it has a good point here. My son and daughter love science, and so we're in the science fair, and they're young, they're 7 and 8 years old. And we were sitting there, and what was interesting is the young kids, they love this stuff, but the older kids aren't that into it, right? Like by the time they're 12 and 13, it stops being cool. And so that's the problem. And my wife and I are sitting there like, okay, there's a pile of 10-year-olds that are just eating this stuff up. And then the 13-year-olds, they're like, yeah, I'm too cool for this stuff. Forget it. And so what we decided to do is go engage way earlier than college, way earlier than high school, earlier than junior high. We decided to create a program to go engage with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders and help them learn how to code, go help them get excited about coding. So what we do is every week we go we've adopted now a couple of schools. We did one, Sage Creek. We've got several now where our employees go in every Friday and they spend essentially half the day with each of the classes. And there's games where there's programming games. There's problem-solving games. We use code.org as the basic curriculum. And there's some crazy stories that came out of this. Two I wanted to share. One, there's a girl, Majestic Billings is her name, and she had never programmed. She was 9 years old, never programmed a lick in her life. Comes to the program and gets just enthralled with it, right? And she's a typical little girl, right? I mean, exactly what you'd expect of a 9-year-old. But it just caught on fire for her. So she codes for the next year using Scratch and code.org. And she does 50 projects on Scratch, if you guys are familiar with Scratch. She's highlighted as one of the top projects in Scratch. A university sees this and decides to have her come do a lecture to the university students. This is a 9-year-old, 10-year-old girl, right? Cool. So she goes and lectures to the university. The radio and TV get a hold of this, and they're like, holy cow, like this is a 10-year-old lecturing college students, and it's changed her life, right? So that's one story. Another story that I think is kind of neat, there was a younger kid, I think he was 7 or 8, couldn't read, wasn't able to read, but he's in the program, right? And so he gets into the coding and the program and loves it, falls in love, and becomes one of the top students in his class. As you'd imagine, really poor confidence, didn't have a lot of self-esteem going into it. All of a sudden, the rest of the class, the students are like, asking him for help, and he's tutoring them, and it just changes this little kid's life. And so the key behind all of this, in my opinion, and you alluded to this, we can't expect government alone to go solve this problem. I mean, there's this weird assumption in North America where we say, hey, it's the government's responsibility to take care of education. And I don't, I pay my taxes, I've done my due. And that's crap. Like, we need to get engaged and be a part of the problem. And you have to have a long view, right? You can't go, again, I started, let's go to the universities, let's do internships, let's get a couple of scholarships, let's lock them up, let's bring them in. And you can't scale that. But think about this. If every student, every 4th, 5th, and 6th grader in Utah knows how to code, like, that changes Utah. You want to put us first? That changes Utah. And a little shout out, we challenged all the other tech companies, and I'll challenge you today too. Domo's taken the challenge. They've adopted 1 or 2 schools. Qualtrics has taken the challenge. I think Vivint's in the process. I challenge everybody. We've got a curriculum. We'll give it to you. But go adopt a school. Adopt a school where your kids go. Like, let's make this easy, right? But we won't succeed if we don't partner and be philanthropic and really kind of dig in.
So there's this altruistic part of this that is terrific. But I have to think that you guys watch out for your bottom line, and that's why you're successful companies. So how does this benefit your business, or how do you negotiate that when you're letting employees off for half a day, or sending them to mentor students? And I'm not trying to discourage that in any way, but I believe that it's a win-win. I just don't know how. How do you negotiate that?
It's simple. Think about it. Every one of our employees has a chance to go spend, a half a day, 3-4 days a week to go get philanthropically involved. So number one, you want culture. That's the first thing to do to create culture. Number two, you want loyalty. You're teaching young kids. They feel that they're a part of something that's big. In fact, there's lots of studies around millennials and millennial workforce. One thing that's really critical to a millennial is that they feel that they're involved in a bigger cause, something that makes a difference. So if you want to attract the right people, you want to retain the right people, these kind of things make a huge difference.
That's right. Well, so I completely agree with that, right? It's all about engagement and retention, right? Your employees have to feel satisfied in order to stay there. And plus, I think the nature of us is also this desire to give back, and if you can combine those. Another interesting thing I think on that point is, I was listening to Matt Holland a couple of months ago, who's the president at UVU, and he talked about the fact that that school will have 58,000 students by 2025. They're already the largest school in the state. And so you reflect on how many kids are coming in and how many jobs we have available. If we as industry don't commit to helping, we will not be able to fill the workforce, which is core to the economic development of the state. We want those kids to be able to have the skills that they contribute at a very significant level to the things our state cares about, and to be able to provide for their families. And if we can engage them in early days, we can help them craft pathways that make them successful, that use the talents they bring to the table, and that ultimately help our entire community. And we only do that by ourselves giving back.
I think one thing that maybe the outside doesn't realize when you're in a classroom is that things change so quickly in your industries. The technology changes. Having teachers trained to teach coding while they're teaching a variety of other subjects can put a lot of burden on teachers. And there are those teachers that do that on their own. They go get the training. But as a state, to be able to look to industry to fill that niche is just really important, and it's incredibly helpful for our schools.
That's right.
One other question I wanted to ask you was about the long-term. You're talking about preparing students to eventually fill your job spots. How do you see that playing out in the next year to 2 years? I mean, you see this growing, the partnerships that we have growing with schools, just exploding. I hope so. Selfishly, I think this is the answer to a lot of the concerns that we have in schools. But what do you see that the future looking like for this, for these partnerships?
I mean, I hope that this becomes part of just how we operate education.
Not the exception, but the rule.
That's right. We had an opportunity to be at the White House about 4 months ago for the Computer Science for All initiative. This is an initiative created by the Obama administration about 8 years ago. I think it's the worst marketed program they actually created. But it's a really fabulous initiative because the idea is, how do you get computer science curriculum integrated into all aspects of education from K through 12? Just like we take biology and earth science and chemistry, we teach kids core concepts. How can we take computer science and make that a core concept through all of education? And then how do we, because that in and of itself is a science, it is a tool that our economy and our state and our country needs. So we want that computer science curriculum from every education department integrated in, because that makes it sustainable, right? We change the curriculum, might be more slowly in education, but when industry steps in and partners, we bring our expertise for teaching coding classes, supporting those organizations, giving them opportunities for internships or week-long integration programs. We change their exposure. We give them an opportunity to be successful. I love the opportunity to take that 7-year-old boy, right, and change the course of his life, right? And we can do that if we work together and make an impact in our communities. And I believe that teaching kids tech and science is a very important foundation of that.
And it's certainly not without its obstacles. I remember, again, back in my past life, we would sometimes get so many calls for volunteers that the schools did not have the capacity. They didn't have someone assigned full-time to
Right.
manage volunteers. And so are those some of the obstacles you face? And if so, how does your company, I think you have people, Dave, in your company that manage those partnerships versus asking the school to hire someone to manage those partnerships.
Yeah, yeah. So two things. One, Utah's a special place, in my opinion. Our governor, I had this idea. I called the governor, and he was like, "Let me know how I can help." So he made introductions to you. I mean, the state government, the local governments, and the schools are really unique here in Utah, where I mean, they opened the doors completely, and they made it really easy. But at the same time, I think, as private organizations, as both public and private companies, you have to commit to something like this, and you can't make it a burden. So we have a foundation where there's dedicated staff, and it's not a lot. And if you're not, 1,000 employees, or maybe you don't have a big staff, maybe it's someone who's part-time. But it sounds like it's a big deal, but again, it helps build your culture, it helps build your company, helps build your people, and so it's just something you have to commit to. But I've found the schools here, the government here, they're begging for this kind of help. And you brought up a point. Think about a kid right out of school with a degree in computer science is going to start on the low end, 70K, could be on the high end here in Utah, 100K, right out of school. What do we pay teachers? It's
Right
not
out of
that.
college. It's about a
It's
third
not
of
that much.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's the problem. We're asking our teachers to come and provide the best education, yet if a teacher's really great at coding, guess what they're doing? They're going out to the industry, right? And so it has to be, and I'm not asking the government to go pay, $100,000 a year salaries to teachers. It's a mission-driven job, but private industry has to come and get engaged.
And I love that. That is absolutely key to what we're doing. The partnership idea, the Talent-Based Ready initiative that will be rolled out in more detail next week. We have information actually out at our booth. But it's this engagement. It's the industry partnering with education, and education then helping provide what industry needs. I think it's really going to change the future of education in Utah.
And it changes the futures of all those children, right? The impact is exponential if we partner together.
You think individually of those students who become parents, who have children,
Right.
who then change the world. So this is our little way to change the
That's
world.
right. We start now.
Thank you.
It requires
Thanks
us
so
together.
much for what you're doing.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Thank you.